Welcome to the Mothers of Misfits podcast. Join me for conversations about how to advocate for our kids in a one-size-fits-all world. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Mothers of Misfits. I have been looking forward to this conversation for a long time. And fun fact, Liesel and I went to the same college, Wheaton College. We graduated the same year. And this is a little bit of a reunion for us. We didn't know each other too well back then, but it's been really interesting and fun to follow each other's journeys professionally, personally. But let me tell you a little bit more about Liesel and then we'll dive in. Liesel Mindrebo Mertes is an acclaimed workplace empathy expert. Having experienced her own loss and struggle, Liesel emerged with a deep understanding of what people need to feel supported after a disruptive life event. She's the founder of Handle with Care Consulting, and she helps people survive, stabilize, and thrive in the aftermath of adversity. Liesel, I am so glad you are here with us today to talk about some tough stuff, but some really important stuff.
Thank you so much for having me. And for all those watching, I am not always in dark glasses, but when I am having a little bit of an eye reaction, I am in dark glasses. So may it contribute to the mystery of the conversation, but I'm so glad to be with you today.
Yes, and for anybody who knows Liesel or follows her on her social media, she's got amazing personal style. So she is rocking some amazing sunglasses today for very
Thank you.
practical reasons, but honestly, of anybody who could just pull that off as being, just a regular thing, it would totally be you. If you're listening and thinking like, what do you mean watching you all? If you don't know yet, we are on YouTube. So if you like the idea of watching us have this conversation and not just hearing us, make sure to check out Mothers of Misfits on YouTube. Okay, Liesel, the topic of loss, unfortunately, is extremely personal to you. Do you mind telling us about Mercy Joan?
Oh, thank you for asking. Mercy Joan is our third of 5 children. She was born in 2011 when I was right in the middle of the first year of a business school program. And we had known in advance that she had a birth defect that had this large fluid-filled sac on the back of her skull. And there was this wide range of outcomes. They didn't know if it would be operable with just mild cognitive impairment, if it was something that would be terminal. And so I spent, those last 20 weeks with my husband, just hoping and praying. But it ended up as she was born that any intervention would be doing things to her and not for her. And so she lived for just 8 days. And that's a marking story in the history of our family. Loss also has gradations to it. My youngest, Moses, who's 7 now, he has a completely unrelated condition. He has a congenital heart defect where he's missing one valve of his heart entirely. And even yesterday, we spent the day at the hospital just making sure that valve didn't have an infection after dental work. So, yeah, I know that for parents that are listening out there, there's grief that results in the death of a child. And then there are griefs of things that you just wish were different, but they're what we walk with in our own lives or in the lives of our people.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I was actually going to ask you about that because oftentimes we grieve what we had envisioned as being our family life, our child's future, and especially if what causes them to be a wonderful, marvelous misfit is some more challenging things. There's absolutely still a loss there. How in the world did you pick yourself back up? I mean, how did you pull back together the pieces? And at that point, you had 2 young kids at home, right?
I did. And a husband, and we didn't have any pets at that point in time. I do want to answer that question, but just touch on, what you said. There's a slide that I show when I'm speaking to groups that says grief is unrealized expectation. And I feel like that's congruent with what you said so many times. It just, we connect it most intuitively to death. but it's really like the death of expectations, which is an invitation for people to ponder how grief shows up in lots of different ways. Um, it's interesting how you phrase that. How did I pull myself back up? Um, because I think that is like an American association with how we get through hard things, like even the
Mhm.
pulling oneself up by the bootstraps, sort of a concept, and whether it's like just something that we end up saying or deeply rooted in our psyche of what we expect of ourselves. There were elements of things that I did, but really, I think that for people who move through grief, the communal aspect of it is huge. I had a lot of healthy and helpful people around me that didn't like shame me or give all the dimensions of the toxic messaging that can come through. Like, why aren't you over this by now? Or I put names to this, like in my trainings. I talk about the cheer up Cheryl response pattern, like why aren't you happy by now? Or commiserating Candace, which is like, oh, I'm going to overwhelm you with my sad story of grief. So I had people who brought me meals, who let me cry. Being outdoors is huge for me. I spent a lot of time walking and hiking in the hills of southern Indiana. I think if you have the chance to, I also like pretty brutally made space in my schedule to honor my grief. I remember even like setting my classes for the semester afterwards, and just looking, and I was signed up for like this really complex spreadsheet analysis, and I was like, I don't want to do that. And I was like, I don't have to. And just honoring some of that space of being like, if I don't have to, I'm not going to. And to not monologue for too long, because maybe I'll pause in it for a second, but like I'm still grieving. Even we're now in March, like the day we're recording this. February was marked 11 years. And while I'm not grieving in the same way, I'm still grieving, even to the level of like this eye thing is a stress related response of a old injury that I got when I was 1 or 2 years old. And it manifested itself right in the middle of that week. I threw out my back on the day that Mercy died 11 years later, doing stability exercises, things like that. So our body keeps the score. I'm at a different place, but yeah, it's not like it's completely in the rearview mirror sort of a thing.
Hmm. We had another guest on that talked about grief, and she really helped me to see that it's contrary to the way I phrased my question, which is really interesting. You made me think about that. It's not something we get over, it's just something we learn to have in our lives, and it evolves and it
Mm.
changes and we change, but it's not a point in the past. And my mother-in-law actually also birthed a child who did not make it but a couple hours. But she, you can still see the pain and the loss of expectation. And um, I want to come back to talking about community, but I
Mm.
am really curious. I asked you actually when we were just chit-chatting before recording. I said, "Remind me how many kids you have." Is
Mhm.
that a really tough question?
Um, it depends on the context, and I allow myself a fair amount of wiggle room in how I answer that,
Mhm,
because I don't think that there's like a right answer or a right way for everyone. There are days where
mhm,
if I'm just in like a business roundtable and it's just moving around quickly, that I feel like it's fine to say 4 kids because they're wondering like who I'm driving to practice and how they're going to relate. Interestingly
mhm,
enough, where that question feels most top of mind, and sometimes it feels important, especially with people I'm going to know for a while, to say I have 5 children, 4 of whom are living. um, but there were times, especially in that year or two afterwards, where it's like I did an internal check and I was like, I don't think I want to go into it right now. I'm just gonna say I have 3 children. I didn't have I hadn't birthed all my babies at
mhm,
that point, but one of my younger living children would be with me, like right at my side, and they would look at me and they would say, no, you don't. You have, at that point we had 3. They would say, no, you don't. You have 4. What about Mercy?
mhm,
And, especially as you have a audience of parents, that was something for me that I specifically integrated in those interactions because I think it communicates something to your living children, how you acknowledge and honor a child who's passed, because depending on their stage of cognition and awareness, that's also signaling something subtle and shaping to them about, well, what if I wasn't here anymore? Would I just cease to be? And um, so that was a nuance that I hadn't necessarily anticipated. It was important to them in the moment to acknowledge mercy.
I got chills when you said that your younger child said, "No, don't forget about mercy," and how sweet and pure, and what a reminder that our little kiddos teach us oftentimes so much more than we teach them. Ugh.
There are moments where the awareness of a child like that is sweet and beautiful. But just to acknowledge for parents that are listening, there are also moments where it's just horrible to have to walk with a young
Mm.
child who's trying to integrate the reality of death and loss. I had a child who was 3.5, 4. It was within 6 to 8 months after Mercy had died. And we were driving around and she just started to go through, are you going to die? Is Nana going to die? Is Papa going to die? And I was, yes, yes. It felt important to me not to lie to them. And she just started weeping and just like from her soul weeping and saying, I don't want to have to watch all of you die. I don't want that to happen. Um, I had another child who his processing manifested itself in being absolutely terrified of dying. Just like I can't even be in a room by myself, or when I think about dying, it was just terror. Um, and moving through that, the things that we read, the songs that we listened to, the teaching of self calming techniques, from as a person of faith to be able to say that is true. I don't think that that is ultimately the end, but yes, it's true. Those are hard things to do, especially when you're in the midst of your own grieving and you're feeling like I am actually personally compromised and wrestling with these things, but it's so important to address them with you. So it's been huge in their development, and I wouldn't say that we've done it perfectly, but we've tried to do it purposefully along the way.
So, what's one piece of advice? I know there's a lot of advice, but if there's one thing that sticks out as most important for parents who are helping their kids navigate grief, what would that be?
I think you should think about the long game of how you're communicating. I think there's a gut level temptation to want to make promises to your children that you can't keep, to set them up because you so want to reconstruct a sense of safety that has come under assault, to say things like,
Mm.
when someone asks, are you going to die? To say, I'm not going to die, because you're thinking, I'm not planning on dying in the next 5 to 10 years. And by then you'll be older. But to
Yeah.
really address that in a way that doesn't set themselves up for, an even bigger disappointment of like, you promise something that you can't deliver on. Also to adjust. I had a child who needed to go into some a developmental pediatrician. She was dealing with grief, and at that point, and still as like a general value for our family, I have wanted Mercy to be integrated into things, to feel like she's acknowledged, that her picture is on the wall, that that she's not erased. But the counselor, the pediatrician, put forward like, what if that is not good for this living child right now? Like, what if that is throwing her into a tailspin, and just like bringing up all of these issues too often for her? And I had to confront an immediate anger. I was so mad. This was like in the child wasn't in the room. It was just me and my husband.
Mm.
I was like, and I said, I hate that. Like, I hate that you said that. I hate the thought that I would have to do that. And, this living child, I was like, she's taking from our family, like her and her stuff, it was just a very raw response. And I had to like
Mhm.
feel that. I had to work through that. I can still feel it even as I say it. But to really look and be like, but actually, my care right now is for these living children. And in stepping back and doing things a little bit differently, I confront my sense of like, are we losing something important? But it's care for her, and it doesn't have to always be that way. So all that to say, like a willingness to do some self-examination and be adjusting to the children that are in front of you is also important along the way, because it was important for that child at that stage, and it doesn't look the same, now as it did. And I really needed people to process through my like big emotions with, and that couldn't be my child. So doing that as well.
I appreciate you sharing that and just being vulnerable. This whole conversation being vulnerable with us about the goods, the bads, and the uglies of what this is,
Mhm.
and the need to get it all out, no
Yeah.
matter what it is. Making sure we're being very real with ourselves and those around us in safe places, in the right context, of course. So, on that note, let's talk about community, because
Mm.
I would think, and that loss actually makes us retreat from community. And you're speaking about how loss should propel us into community. How do we get ourselves to want to be in community where we may just want to be alone?
I do think that grief is one of the most profoundly isolating of emotions. And I'll follow with and yet. But in the level of isolation, because no one will know, no one has the relationship that you had with the person who's lost. So there's this sense, there's this always like, I can go so far with you, but not further. Even with like an intimate partner or a sibling, like, and because people are at different moments, I in a journey of loss might want to just be by myself. My husband might feel like it's really important for me to be with. They can cause these huge disconnects of like, we're at totally different places, and you are supposed to be the person who gets me more than anyone. Whatever relational dynamic you can suddenly, it's not only that you're missed, but you can pour all of this emotion into it. So I don't necessarily think, especially in early grief, that the onus is on the grieving person to being like, it should propel you into community. It should be a signal to community to be able to give care to the affected individual. I think it was in Adam Grant and Sheryl Sandberg's book Lean In. I don't think it's their graph, but I first saw the image there, and it was of these concentric circles of affect. If you're closest to the interior, you've suffered the most profound grief and loss, and then maybe exterior to that are extended family members who have also, in my case, grandparents who've lost their grandchild. Next level up, maybe coworkers, they know they're affected, but that care should be flowing inward from the outermost levels of the circle, to pouring towards the people most affected. And I think for community, when you see someone who's going through something hard, especially in our American context, we are ill acquainted with grief. We don't have cultural touchstones. We don't wear black anymore. We don't like all go see the body. We don't have these community links. We're profoundly out of our depth, and we don't teach people how to do it. We just wish it would go away. It's like sanitized. So that's one part of the work that I do, like in businesses and with individuals, is to realize that actually loss is one of the most common human experiences. And in when we can clear some of these like behavioral, roadblocks within our own story of like stupid things that people said to us when we, had lost someone that we're just reduplicating because we're uncomfortable. And to look at some of those things and to realize like
Mhm.
actually when people go through a hard time, a deep fear is that they will be completely alone in this. No one will get me. No one will move towards me. I can only carry it myself. And that actually ways to meet people in that fear and alleviate some of it aren't half as complicated or hard as we make them out to be when we're just stuck in our own heads.
And honestly, that's a lot of my vision and heart behind this podcast, is because we can feel pretty lonely when our kids are misfits for one reason or another, and we can feel like we're alone in our advocating for them, in our experience. and having, this is a community of moms. But I love that you say the onus is on the community to rally around the person, not for the
Mhm.
person to go seek out community. But let's be real, like you were talking about, it feels really awkward because we aren't given these skill sets. And what's great about what you teach about is that empathy isn't just a personality trait or isn't at all, it's a skill set. But we
Right.
didn't have that class in college or in high school or in life, right? And most of us, what we know to do is sweep it under the rug, right? And so that means we create so much, or I'll speak for myself, a lot of awkwardness around somebody who's grieving. So, how can we be better friends, colleagues, family members to someone who just suffered a loss? And maybe even more specifically, to someone who just suffered the loss of a child?
Yeah. Um, Having a learner's mindset is great heading into this conversation. Like, I teach this stuff, I get paid to do it. I continue to learn and iterate and grow in this. Baseline, I would say,
Mhm.
doing something is almost always better than doing nothing. There are some things that are like, you know, toxic or like judgmental. Those are not the things. But like, if you think, oh, should I say something or should I just be quiet? I don't want to make it worse. Even saying something like, it's hard for me to even know what to say right now, but this seems so horrible. And I just wanted to let you know I'm so sorry. Like, even that basic is better than saying nothing. A text, I'm thinking of you in this hard time. And especially when we're talking about death, but it's not just death, it's, any sort of thing. There are always people that are listening, and I can see it, like, I can see the connections they're making, and sometimes they say it, like, they're thinking like, "Oh my gosh, I totally dropped it with so and so 3 weeks ago. I would have wanted to be there. I wasn't. I was too busy. I was too awkward." There's also the realization of like, grief is not like a momentary intersection in your story and then it's done. Um, Follow up. Be like, "You know what? I wanted to say something a month ago and I just didn't, and I'm sorry. I wanted to check in, and just tell you I'm thinking about you." Okay, practical things. Don't say, "Let me know how I can help." That feels like a good thing to do, and it's better than nothing. Don't say that, because somebody who is going through something hard, they are just trying to survive and like have clean underwear for their people and all these basic levels. What you're actually asking is for them to do some of the creative imaginative work of like, okay, how could you help? And then what if they ask you to do something that you don't want to do? What if they say like, could you let my dogs out, and you hate dogs? Much better to offer something specific and tangible, and this will require doing some basic self inventory. What are things that you can give and that you're good? Like, maybe you make great bread. Maybe you can buy somebody a gas card because they're driving back and forth to the hospital. We were at the hospital with Moses yesterday. Somebody texted me who's in my school community, and she was like, "Can I make lunches for your kids tomorrow to save you the hassle?" And I was like, what a fantastic thing. Yeah, I don't really want to be making lunches. So just thinking specifically, maybe you're like an acts of service person and it's fall and the leaves have come down, and somebody is just like in the thick of it, and you're like, "Can I come over and rake your leaves?" It's easier now than ever. Again, we were in the hospital yesterday. This morning, somebody sent me a Grubhub $50, gift card, and said, "Hey, I just want to help, probably with dinners. You'll be a little behind." So, um, offer something specific instead of saying, "Can I do anything to help?" is one really like actionable thing you can do.
Yeah, you just blew my mind with that. I am so guilty of, let me know if there's anything I can do to help you. Because I think I'm trying to be fragile, or, I'm trying not to be pushy, but yeah, I'm totally putting the onus back on them. And I'm even applying this not just to uh, serious, difficult life events, but happy ones like the birth of a
Yeah.
child, which are still very disruptive. And we have good friends that just had their second child. And rather than saying, "Hey, let us know if you need help," actually, I did say, "Can I come and get your older son and take him bowling so that the three of you can just have some family time. But there are definitely plenty of times where it's kind of like, let me know. And I'm going to make sure that I get more specific and that I choose the thing that I know I can do well and that I want to do. That's actually
Yeah.
just a really good point there too. Because if we leave it open-ended, it doesn't benefit any of us.
And it could set you up for something that you don't really want to deliver on. It's actually really freeing to know what you're good at and
Mhm.
what you can deliver on. And then on the back end, don't be personally invested in whether they take you up on it or not. You might offer something like, hey,
Mhm.
I'd love to take your son bowling. And they actually might really want to be having family time or something like that. It's something like as you get deeper into it, it can be like relationally messy if you're someone who you're trying to do a good job and you're like, I offered something specific. I tried to be a good friend and you're not taking me up on it. So you're not signaling back to me that I'm a good friend. Like, just realize they've got a lot going on and they might take you up on it. They might not. And if they don't, that's an invitation for you to offer maybe again in a week, the same thing, maybe something different in a couple of days. But like, again, those concentric circles, you're probably the more stable one. Act like the more stable one. In unrelated, non-endorsed post, one of my favorite things to do lately has been these mini cupcakes baked by Melissa. People love these mini cupcakes.
Mhm.
They ship anywhere in the US. They're close enough to my price point of what I'd want to send, but they've been great. I figure who doesn't want like a delightful array of, 25 cupcakes that they can eat all themselves or share, depending on how they feel.
I love that. Yes, we will have to go find those cupcakes and link to those in the episode insiders newsletter. So my last question for you is, let's put this in the workplace space because I feel like a lot of the things we've talked about feel more natural, more easy in a family or a friendship, but at work, a colleague, that gets hairy, right? And we're all, I think, just hyper mindful of what we say and how much we're getting involved in each other's personal lives. Are the strategies any different? Should we still say something over not saying something? Should we still offer to help with something specific? What is it? How does that change or not change?
Well, the great thing about the workplace setting is you're still working with people, and there is a through line that is there. And the reality is also, I mean, the pandemic has only increase the churn, but like we're more enmeshed with like life involving work and being all involved. So yes, there are specific like um concerns that are addressed with HR parameters at the workplace, and that's like a whole conversation to unpack. But still, doing something is better than doing nothing. And I'll close with just like a closing image, because sometimes at work people are really concerned of like, I am not a trained counselor. I don't want to get into legal trouble. It's like all of these mental pivots that move us away from people. And
Mhm.
the reality is like we can be workplace first responders in an emotional level. And how that's helpful is a first responder is someone who has like a basic skill set that can help physically stabilize you to the next level of care in reaching out to people, in acknowledging the loss that they've had. I know that you're going through the divorce right now and you're still in the thick of it. I imagine that's a lot on your plate. Is there any project that I can take right now that would be helpful? Or, I know that your child was in the hospital all of last week. I am so sorry. That is just exhausting. Statements like that. This is like the skill set of a first responder that can help just stabilize them in the workplace. That doesn't mean that you have to be, in the physical realm. First responder is not orthopedic surgeon, not ambulance driver. Like they know the extent of their training. In the social and emotional realm, we're trying to do the same sort of thing. You are not someone's pastor, their rabbi, their small group leader, their psychologist. They might need all of those things, or they might not, just like with a first responder. Maybe somebody gets an ACE wrap and they're fine. Maybe they need a total knee reconstructive surgery. But if you can just help with that stabilizing care, those create workplace spaces where people, they're attractive, they retain people. And the data points at work whether it's being published in Harvard Business Review or Forbes, like people are craving this, and it's really in the midst of this great realignment, influencing their workplace choices.
Well, and as you've said so many times, that loss is a great equalizer for all of us, and COVID exaggerated that and helped us to see the need for these kinds of conversations, for giving us skill sets to deal with grief and the loss of what's expected, even more so now more than ever. Liesel, for those that want to learn more about you and the amazing work that you're doing, how can they do that?
You can check out my website, which is lieselmirtis.com. I'm also the host of a podcast. It's called Handle with Care, Empathy at Work. And it's where we talk about stories of disruption at work and tips to make you a better manager, coworker, or friend. So that's linked on the website. You can also find that wherever you get your favorite podcasts. So yes, Handle with Care Consulting.
Yeah, you can check that out. And Liesel's got some great videos out there. You can watch those. Definitely want to check out her podcast. And we'll be sure to link to all of that in your episode insiders newsletter, which is the email that we send out every time we drop a new episode on Tuesdays. So you get all the good stuff about our guests, extra resources, all these links. So make sure you're signed up for that on mothersofmisfits.com. Liesel, thanks again. I have just been enriched by this conversation today, and I know that's true of everyone listening.
Thanks, Emily.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Mothers of Misfits podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We also invite you to visit us at mothersofmisfits.com.